So, photographers, you have a project coming up. There's something on the books that you are looking forward to and really looking forward to the paycheck for. Only then the client contacts you and lets you know the project's being canceled. Yikes. Let's talk about what to do. Are you tired of the endless stream of fantasy marketing and vanity metrics? Yeah, so am I. My name is James Patrick, and I'm an internationally published photographer, media specialist, and marketing strategist. As a creative entrepreneur, I face the same exact frustrations you have, being bombarded by generic advice that promises success but never lives up to the hype. We need to move beyond the posturing, beyond the facade, beyond the image to navigate the unique challenges we face as creatives. Together, we're going to dive into real stories, real strategies, and the real work that can lead to the real results. This is the Beyond the Image podcast. What is going on? And thank you so much for tuning into this or latest episode of the Beyond the Image podcast. I'm glad that you could take some time to get some information and get a little inspiration to help you in your creative entrepreneurial journey. And I apologize, this show's coming out a little bit late this week. We were hoping to record this episode actually last week, so we would have it to pump out at the beginning of the week, but weren't able to get to it. We had too many back-to-back productions, and then we were traveling the first half of this week. We had a commercial shoot up in Northern California. So apologies that this episode is a little bit tardy, but nonetheless, here we are because we're not canceling this episode. Project cancellations. Hey, this happens to every photographer, to every videographer, to every creative, which is you have a project coming up and likely you've already done some pre-production work on. You've already invested time and energy into this project, only for the client to then come back and say, sorry, this is not happening. We're not able to move forward. And the reasons are kind of all over the map. It could just be that, hey, the person we were meant to photograph is no longer available. That happens a lot in editorial productions. I've had so many photo shoots with athletes, with musicians, with actors who, for one reason or another, are no longer available on that day. And due to the deadline of the publication, we have to move in another direction. Okay, so they're scrapping the project. We've had it where I was supposed to photograph the band Jimmy Eat World. And then 24 hours before the shoot, their manager notified us they were no longer available. Earlier this year, we had a photo shoot with Coco Graf, the tennis player. And then the whole issue with the FAA having their paychecks withheld and air travel becoming an absolute nightmare, that we were not able to confidently schedule travel to make this production happen. So that production got postponed indefinitely. Who knows if it will ever be put back on the books. The point is that this is incredibly frustrating for a couple of reasons. One, because we anticipate the revenue and we think, okay, we have revenue, it's coming in, and then, oh, it's gone. And you could just sub out revenue for great opportunities if it's a low paid project. But realistically, the reason it's most frustrating is because we've already invested ourselves into it. We've spent time talking to the client, sending out proposals, working on pre-production, location scouting, coordinating team, coordinating schedules, booking travel, doing storyboards and mood boards. We've already put in work into this production, only for the production to hopefully just be postponed and rescheduled, but sometimes completely canceled. And that is incredibly frustrating. It is incredibly disappointing to lose income that you were counting on, to lose time that you've already invested. So what do we do about it? Well, the first thing, and this is tricky, but is not to take it personal. Professionalism truly, truly matters in this, and how you respond to this says a lot about you and a lot about clients' perception of you. Stuff happens. Clients sometimes need to cancel. Sometimes it is completely out of their hands. I mean, sometimes it's completely the client's fault, but sometimes there are so many forces out of it, like that FAA thing. That's not something the client could have predicted. That's not their fault. And why hasn't it been rescheduled? Well, Getting someone with the clout of Coco Graph is not easy. Getting them again is that much more difficult. Things happen. So, how you respond and responding professionally in that moment absolutely matters. But this really reiterates why having a contract is important. So, just the other week, we had a project get canceled. And I had already invested time into one, hiring an assistant for the production. So now the assistant had scheduled their time to be at this photo shoot. They had arranged their schedule to be at this photo shoot. I had spent the time to find an assistant, to coordinate with the assistant. So, I mean, that's already conservatively 30 minutes. Then I spent close to 2 hours prepping the mood board and the shot list and the lighting diagrams for how we were going to do this photo shoot, because there were multiple people involved in the photo shoot and we had a very narrow window of which to shoot in, which meant that I had to spend a lot of time planning this production. And I had prepped not only a look board and a mood board, but also the lighting diagram so that my assistant and I could quickly and efficiently set up the project so that once the subjects were on set, we can go through it super fast and respect their time. And that time is gone. I don't get that back. That mood board is now useless. All that time I put into it for nothing, because the publisher of the project didn't like where the direction was going, not our direction, but how the details of the subjects were coming together, and canned the project. And we didn't have a contract. So we got nothing out of that. Zero. We were not paid for our schedules being open and held, meaning no one else could book us during that time. That's another big thing, is when you hold time for something, you can't be booked for that. And how often do we hold time for someone only to have them cancel? And we had someone else who wanted that time slot. It happens all the time. And it is incredibly disheartening that people don't seem to understand that, because they're focused on their own problems. Rightfully so. But it doesn't take the sting away. Now, on this project, we didn't have a contract, and we should have had a contract. We absolutely should have. Why didn't we have a contract? Well, we've worked with this client a handful of times. This was a low financial project to begin with. So it's so easy to think, well, it's just happening next week, and there's not a lot of money on the line. This doesn't seem like that big of a deal. We can skip trying to put things in writing. And what happened? Because we skipped putting things in writing, I lost all that time. My assistant lost that revenue. I lost that revenue. I lost time that I could have been spending on other things to make revenue. So the importance of a contract, one, is it defines the expectations of the project. Here's the scope, here are the deliverables, here's the due dates. So it's not only a client's promise to you, it's your promise to the client. It protects the client as well. Both parties get protected when a contract is done. It eliminates ambiguity, but also it can make difficult conversations so much easier. We didn't have a contract, so there's no leverage I have in this canceled project. Zero. Nothing I can say. Nothing's in writing. I mean, there's talk about what the project is and what we're trying to do. We have email communication on that, but there's no discussion of what happens if the project gets canceled or postponed. There's no guarantees. There's no promises. Having a contract protects you, and having things like a cancellation policy, a retainer policy, a rescheduling policy protects you in these exact moments. I had a project at the very start of my career where there were two different decision makers at the client, the person who hired me and then someone else who did not like that the first person who hired me made a decision without them. So when I showed up on set to do the photo shoot, they started interrogating me because they were not the ones who hired me. Are you sure you can do what I need? Are you the right person for this job? They are literally interrogating me when I should be shooting. And at some point I says, you know what? No, I'm not the right person for the job. Sorry. Not sorry, but sorry. And I walked off set. And I went back to the person who hired me, who I had a contract with. And I said, in this contract, there's a kill fee. This project was killed. So I'm going to only charge you the kill fee of the project, which I think was 50%. You're going to pay 50% because this project was killed. And I had to walk off set. And they did. They were completely apologetic and embarrassed that their colleague did that. And so they wrote that check. Had I not had that contract, who knows if I would have collected anything off that. I had to drive like 2 hours out there and spend an hour being interrogated when I should have been shooting and then drive 2 hours back. I mean, that's almost a full day. The second thing is the importance of a retainer. You can call it a down payment, but really it's a retainer. It retains your time. It places them in your schedule where no one else can take that spot. They have secured that spot. Whereas a deposit, by definition, indicates that the project has to happen. Now, your contract could clarify that and have a no refund on deposits policy. I just find it simpler to call it a retainer. They are retaining your time. And if they cancel, that retainer is non-refundable. You are reserving not just the service you're providing, you're reserving your availability to the service. The client invests in the commitment to your schedule. And you can choose how to do retainers. So when I'm working with individuals, because most of my cancellations, when I look at my work, be it individual clients or corporate and commercial clients, most of my cancellations are from individuals, overwhelmingly. The reason being is there's often too much on the line during a commercial production for there to be a cancellation. So with individuals, I collect a 50% retainer. If you want to be on the schedule, we collect 50%. And once we retain that 50%, you get on the schedule. We do the same thing at our studio here. To reserve your time at the studio, we collect 50% minimum. And then we collect the other 50% when we do the project. A retainer also energetically commits someone to the project or to seeing the project through. So we had an individual hire us to do a portfolio photo shoot earlier this year. And they selected a date for the photo shoot. And we took a 50% retainer to secure that photo shoot date. They then came back and said, we need to reschedule. That's fine. We'll reschedule. You've already invested into holding time. I'll allow one reschedule with the retainer you've already invested. If you need to reschedule again, I'm going to collect the other 50% because I've now held 2 dates for you. But they says, no, we just need to move this once. Okay. I'll honor that. And that's professionalism. That's having open dialogue with your client. Then about a week before that project, they came back and says, you know what? We just need to cancel. I'm not available that day anymore. Can I get a refund? No, you can't. Absolutely not. We've held 2 dates for you. That refund was non-refundable, or that retainer was non-refundable. So we held 2 dates. You rescheduled the first one, and now you are canceling the second one. So at that point, there is no goodwill left. We're not rude about it. We're not mean about it. We're not unprofessional about it. If you would like to book the production, We will hold the 50% you've already paid in full. So to book the production, we will just collect the remaining 50%, and that will get you on the calendar again. And they said, okay. They never booked again. But we said we'd hold it for them. So it's up to them. But we did that in a professional way. So that retainer protected us. So we did not lose time. We did not lose our energy that we invested into this project. But what happens when you don't have either? Like that project that happened just last week. And it's something we all experience, regardless of how much experience you have. I still have it happen. I've been doing this 20 years and I still have it happen. Where we think, well, we had a conversation about this and people honor their conversations. We're honoring our end of the bargain. One thing you could consider, and this is not a bad idea, and this is not unprofessional, is in a professional, courteous way, let the client know the time you've already invested into this production and ask if they'd be willing to compensate you for the work that was already done. Now, they could just say no, but they could say yes. And it's not unprofessional for you to request that, because what you're saying is, hey, I'm so sorry that this got canceled. Just as an example, just so you're aware, we did invest 3 hours in the planning of this project, in creating the mood boards for this project, and holding the time for this project, and reserving the studio for this project. That was another thing. We reserved the studio. No one else could book the studio during that time. Would you be willing to compensate us for the time we've already invested, knowing that the project needs to be rescheduled or knowing that the project has to be canceled and we've lost that time and energy? And if they say no, okay, then maybe that tells you something about the client, and if you want to be working with them, and their reliability and their professionalism. And if they say yes, okay. So for example, my assistant, I look at this all has to roll downhill. My assistant that I hired for that project that got canceled, I said to them, I says, please let me know if I owe you anything for this cancellation. They said, you do not. I says, okay, well, I have another one coming up in 2 days I can hire you for. So I hired them for a separate one and I paid them, and I gave a little tip on that one. So this applies to me too as a business owner. Only I offered it. I says, I'm so sorry that the client backed out on this. I know you held your time. Please let me know if I owe you anything. So you can ask. But really what this is a reminder, a constant reminder to build a better onboarding process for your projects. An onboarding process is, once you have an inquiry, what you go through before the project becomes actualized. For example, a discovery call. If a client is not willing to have a call with us, that is an enormous red flag about their level of commitment to a project. A written proposal. So, for example, I was asked to put together a proposal for a project that would be happening late summer, early fall. Now, I'm very familiar with what this project needs. I could just fire out a proposal that same day. But I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump on a call with a client, which we're going to do next week, and we're going to talk through specifically what they need so that my proposal is more accurate. I have a really good idea of what they want, but now I will know definitively what they want. So I can create a proposal that is completely accurate and customized to what their needs are. And also, they're investing time in that conversation too. So we have a discovery call. We then do a written proposal. Included in the proposal is the full scope, the full list of deliverables, and the full contract, which includes details like the retainer, the cancellation policy, the rescheduling policy, when payment is due, the net terms of the project. We then send out the invoice for the retainer. And the project goes in the calendar once the retainer invoice is paid. Then the calendar becomes officially reserved. They receive the calendar confirmation. Then at that point, we can begin pre-production. So what we're not doing is we're not planning the project. We're not doing the pre-production, doing the mood boards, doing the storyboards, hiring staff, reserving the studio, blocking off the calendars until these steps are done. Now, these steps, will they prevent every cancellation? No. Not a chance. Will they minimize cancellations? Absolutely. But what they are guaranteed to do is to massively and exponentially decrease the amount of frustration and drama and back and forth you have with clients because you've put things in writing, because there are terms that you are agreeing to and your client is agreeing to. The goal is not to prevent all cancellations. Cancellations are going to happen. The goal is to prevent your business from being so negatively impacted when cancellations do occur. The signed contract and retainer is not going to fix every problem, but they're going to prevent one cancellation from being a very expensive lesson. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Beyond the Image. We appreciate your 5-star reviews on the Apple Podcasts app, for subscribing on YouTube, for sharing this podcast with a friend. We'll catch you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.